1,000 QVC shows.
Do you think I have? What are you talking about?
You look exactly the same, though. These are some of the hot questions that everyone wants to know. Talk about your name.
There were no tears there. And this podcast with Jamie Kern-Lima was absolutely...
And she also is pretending like she's crying. And we did a zero in, like we zoomed in just to see. There isn't a tear in sight.
Meghan Markle shed some tears recently. Or at least that's the story. But Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly aren't exactly lining up to hand her a tissue. Instead, the two unleashed a podcast-level roast so sharp it could have dried up all those tears before they even fell.
We spend so much of our life trying to prove something. To prove that you're enough. You have to prove that you're pretty enough. You have to prove that you're smart enough. You prove that you're a good wife or a good friend. And I was like, I am just so done with the prove it game.
So Meghan Markle got emotional again, tears and all. Or at least that's what she wants us to believe. But Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, yeah, they're not buying it. They recently sounded off in separate podcasts. And honestly, their combined skepticism hit harder than any royal drama Netflix could dream up.
And the two of them have the weirdest dynamic. And so in this podcast, Megyn does her perfectly curated life thing, but she's allegedly wearing no makeup. Meanwhile, she's got like the perfect blowout, and like she's completely camera ready.
Was she genuinely overwhelmed or just giving us another polished performance with just the right amount of trembling voice and dramatic pauses? That's what everyone's asking. And Joe and Megyn came in swinging with their opinions.
And none of them are prepared to ever give her a dose of reality.
Neither of them mentioned her name directly. No need, the timing said it all. Megyn's emotional moment aligned with the launch of her podcast's new season, which already had people raising eyebrows. To Rogan, it felt more like a script than a spontaneous breakdown. He joked in classic Joe fashion that if you're crying while directing your own camera angles and likely editing the sobs in post, it's probably not the raw vulnerability you're selling, it's showbiz.
The most influential man in the world, Time Magazine should have been.
No, Meghan Markle beat me.
God. How if it's most influential, there should be there's no debate. Nobody's even in the same category as you.
And Megyn, she didn't go loud. She went sharp. Her take was more controlled but no less brutal. Basically, she implied that Megyn crying on cue is about as believable as a soap opera plot twist timed too perfectly, too polished, too convenient. They both dug into a bigger issue: how modern podcasts, especially celebrity ones, seem to turn emotional moments into a performance. It's like the more you cry, the more relatable you seem, even if it's completely manufactured. And Megyn's episode, let's just say it checked every box. At the end of the day, neither Joe nor Megyn bought the waterworks. And judging by the reaction online, a lot of people feel the same. Megyn may be aiming for raw and real, but when the lighting's flawless, the tears are invisible, and the camera's rolling, it's hard not to wonder if it's just another well-produced moment meant to keep us watching. While Joe Rogan was out there roasting Meghan Markle with his usual firestorm sarcasm, Megyn Kelly took a different approach, a little less flamethrower, a little more forensic audit. She didn't need to raise an eyebrow, she raised evidence. Names were named, timelines were outlined, and she pretty much said, if you're going to cry on air, at least make it believable. Maybe dab on some moisturizer so we don't see those perfectly matte cheeks pretending to melt down. To Megyn, the whole thing felt staged, like someone auditioning for a role they had already written for themselves. She wasn't vague about it either. She pointed out the oddly timed pauses, the delicate vocal trembles, and strangely, the total lack of actual crying. No sniffles, no watery eyes, not even a single mascara smudge. It was less emotional moment and more cinematic lighting test.
Is that Megyn doesn't want to have to write a book now, which would obviously include loads and loads of positive stuff about Prince Harry.
Megyn broke it down like a true analyst, step by step, like she was walking the audience through a crime scene, not a podcast episode. This wasn't raw vulnerability, she said. This was production. Megyn delivered a very polished I'm so hurt monologue with the energy of someone who just watched a sad puppy ad. Except instead of tears, she reached for a mic and a trending hashtag. And she didn't stop at critiquing the episode. Nope, she zoomed out and looked at the timing. Megyn's teary moment just so happened to drop right when she was rolling out her new brand project. Coincidence? About as surprising as London rain.
Eye makeup on. And she also is pretending like she's crying. And we did a zero in, like we zoomed in just to see. There isn't a tear in sight, Dan. Look at this. I invite the viewers to take a close-up look.
Suddenly, the whole wounded Duchess finding her voice narrative popped back up. Right as her name needed a little media boost, and the public, they weren't buying it. Online sleuths came out in full force. Twitter was zooming in on her eyes, bone dry. Reddit was comparing her to actual crying people for reference. Someone even made a meme with a flowchart connecting Megyn's podcast tears to a bottle of Visine. People weren't falling for it, not when the emotion felt like it was penciled in between glam squad visits and a scheduled PR campaign. The whole thing just felt too perfect, too polished, too convenient. A moment of raw truth that just so happened to land right in the middle of a major publicity wave. And in a world where the internet never sleeps, that kind of timing isn't just suspicious, it's basically a headline waiting to be dissected. This didn't feel like pain, it felt like PR. Not a moment of real messy honesty, but a repackaged version of what we've already seen before, just with crisper audio and a podcast filter slapped on top. If her Oprah interview was the theatrical trailer, this was the sequel. Same script, better sound design. Is Meghan Markle breaking the royal mold or just constantly stuck in the spotlight's crosshairs? Her emotional podcast moment stirred up mixed feelings. While some listeners felt touched, others hit next before the tears could even drop. And then there's the host, Jamie Kern-Lima. Something about her energy just didn't land right. The dynamic felt a little too polished, a little too rehearsed.
Whether today you're listening for yourself or because someone that you love shared this episode with you, I want to welcome you to the Jamie Kern-Lima Show podcast family.
Online reactions were intense, especially after Megyn made Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential women. A lot of people weren't impressed. And as for Prince Harry, his recent BBC interview only added fuel to the fire. Critics pounced, and behind closed doors, palace staff continued whispering that Megyn acts more like a celebrity than a duchess. Her podcast appearance was billed as raw, honest, and stripped of glamour, just Megyn opening up. But for many, it felt like another performance dressed up as vulnerability. As for Jamie, instead of pressing Megyn with thoughtful questions, she spent most of the episode praising her. The whole thing ended up sounding more like a public fan letter than a real conversation. And when it was all over, listeners were left wondering, did we actually learn anything new about Megyn, or just hear the same story wrapped in softer lighting? A lot of people just aren't buying the authentic Megyn narrative. Critics are calling her emotional podcast episodes less of a heartfelt confession and more of a well-timed PR move to promote her latest lifestyle brand. Yes, her product sold out in under half an hour, but according to insiders, there wasn't much inventory in the first place. It looked like a sellout success, but some are calling it classic illusion. Create scarcity, drive hype, and then let the media do the rest. Meanwhile, buyers are still waiting on their orders. And Megyn's latest round of trademark filings, covering everything from yoga gear to pet accessories, only added fuel to the skepticism. Even some of her former supporters on social media are starting to feel like it's less about passion and more about pushing influencer vibes. It doesn't help that the podcast episode played out like a highlight reel of how perfect her life is, rather than an honest, vulnerable conversation. One part of the episode left people especially confused. Megyn said she writes nightly emails to her kids, toddlers. Some listeners found it touching. Others saw it as one of those overly curated mom moments that you'd see on Pinterest. Sweet or staged, the internet couldn't agree.
Here's an email that I've been keeping for you.
I have full body chills right now.
For your whole life. And here's everything and every moment that I wanted to tell you how much I love you and like how proud I am of you. And of all things, it's making me emotional. For them to be able to look back and go, oh my gosh, she has loved us so much.
Despite all the pushback, the episode racked up millions of streams and spread across TikTok and Instagram like wildfire. Host Jamie Kern-Lima called it raw, but many listeners weren't convinced. What really raised eyebrows was her claim that Megyn hadn't seen the questions ahead of time, even though the whole thing felt tightly scripted, every word carefully placed. It didn't come off as off-the-cuff or spontaneous. It came off as polished PR. Journalist Alexander Larman didn't mince words. He said Megyn's tearful moment seemed like an obvious play to stay relevant. A royal insider told The Express that no amount of emotional storytelling would reverse the damage to her public image. And then there was the Time 100 Summit. Megyn showed up but didn't actually make the 2025 list. That didn't stop the backlash, especially online, where users called her appearance tone-deaf, with many questioning how launching jam and honey suddenly qualifies as global impact. Plenty of people saw the summit appearance as more of a PR moment than a milestone. And over in Prince Harry's world, things didn't go much better. After losing a court appeal about his personal security, he criticized King Charles for not stepping in. The reaction wasn't exactly warm. The Daily Mail's Sarah Vine accused him of using his father's illness to gain sympathy, while palace insiders told ITV News they found it tasteless. One source even claimed King Charles has started to worry that anything he says to Harry could end up in the next Netflix special. As for Megyn, she's still facing criticism from all sides. Megyn Kelly bluntly called her a malignant narcissist. Celia Walden at The Telegraph described Megyn's podcast as less of an honest discussion and more of a branded self-help pitch. And according to Page 6, even some major wellness companies like Goop have reportedly turned down collaborations with her, calling her too divisive for their audience. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly accidentally ended up being the perfect tag team. Joe did his thing, throwing in gut reactions, rolling his eyes, and tossing out jokes like popcorn. Meanwhile, Megyn brought the ice-cold logic, picking apart every detail like a lawyer tearing down a flimsy case. When he heard her talk, he just laughed it off.
It's very interesting. We haven't even touched on Harry and Meghan yet. God.
That's the big distraction.
That's the big distraction.
She tore apart the delivery, and without ever teaming up, their commentary met at the same conclusion. Meghan Markle's big emotional moment felt as manufactured as a press kit. All it took to spark this takedown was Megyn stepping back into the spotlight with what looked like more of a scripted emotional scene than anything truly vulnerable. To her fans, she's a symbol of strength and survival. To her critics, she's turned emotion into a commodity, selling pain in shiny packaging.
You know, Megyn, she will talk about her childhood in, I think, highly suspicious ways. We only have got, like, she tells us she's about to come up on her 7-year anniversary, which means we've known her now for almost 10 years, okay? We've been living through this long global nightmare for 10 years.
And let's be honest, the skepticism isn't random. This is someone who spent years saying she wants privacy, while signing Netflix deals, gracing magazine covers, and now sharing tearless breakdowns in carefully edited podcast episodes. It's not the story that's turning people off, it's the staging, the lighting, the background music, the sense that every single moment, even the sadness, is part of a well-managed brand strategy.
Oh my God. It's like, well, I'm a great runner if someone's chasing me. Otherwise, just not the most athletic.
She's a great runner if someone's chasing her, like the British royal family. Actually, that didn't entail.
There's a growing sense that Megyn's emotional moments aren't about vulnerability, they're about strategy. Each tear seems to come at just the right moment to sell something, say something, or shift the narrative. Even Jamie, the host, caught some heat for sounding overly rehearsed and too eager, like a sidekick reading from the same script. The Independent's Rosin Lanigan even compared the entire episode to an infomercial, polished, one-sided, and more focused on selling an image than sharing anything real. Jamie might have built a billion-dollar brand, but her credibility couldn't rescue a podcast that felt more like a PR than personal truth. Between Megyn's emotional monologue and Harry's public complaints, one thing's clear. They're getting attention again. But the question everyone's asking is any of it real? Some believe the couple is using their personal struggles to reconnect with the public and tell their story after years of backlash. Others think they've just gotten really good at staying in the spotlight by repackaging their pain as content. If she really wanted to connect with people, she could have sat on her couch, grabbed her phone, and just spoken from the heart. Instead, we got a high-gloss production that felt more like it belonged in a film festival than someone's earbuds. Joe didn't need to say her name. Megyn didn't need to hold back. They both just reacted like most people did, confused, slightly uncomfortable, and wondering how something so emotional could feel so empty.
Speculation that she was on Epstein's yacht at one point in time. There was like photos with her and Prince Andrew way back in the day when she was like in her early 20s.
Wow.
Joe cracked jokes, Megyn brought receipts, but they landed in the same place, calling out the performance, not because people don't feel for Megyn, but because this didn't feel like real emotion, it felt like strategy. And the most ironic part, Megyn manages to stay in the spotlight by constantly trying to escape it. One moment she's a royal, then a rebel, then a podcaster, then a victim, shifting roles like outfits. It's like watching a one-woman show about escaping fame while selling tickets to the front row. Just when you thought Meghan Markle's podcast couldn't get any more theatrical, in walked the most unexpected double act since pineapple met pizza. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, totally different personalities from opposite corners of the media, yet somehow perfectly in sync for this moment. One's the king of laid-back takedowns with a side of conspiracy chat. The other's a razor-sharp critic who could cross-examine a press statement before her morning espresso. And together, they danced around one shared conclusion. Megyn's emotional moment felt less like vulnerability and more like a well-edited production. Joe didn't rage or rant. He didn't need to. His approach was classic Rogan, laid back, smirking, and devastatingly sarcastic. He poked holes in the narrative with just enough humor to make it sting. It was like watching someone casually unscrew the bolts on a polished PR machine while sipping whiskey. And Megyn, she came in with charts, receipts, and a perfectly timed eyebrow raise. She didn't just question the emotion, she practically drew a timeline showing how the tears lined up a little too neatly with the launch of Megyn's latest project. Her conclusion, this wasn't an emotional release, it was a campaign rollout. The kind where the only thing trickling down was strategy, not actual tears. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly might come from completely different worlds, but on this they seem to agree. Megyn's emotional podcast didn't feel like a moment of truth, it felt like a carefully crafted performance. Everything was just a little too perfect. The dramatic pauses, the emotional voice crack, the background music swelling at the right second. It felt more like a Netflix finale than someone opening up from the heart. While some listeners felt moved, others were just rolling their eyes. Joe and Megyn, they weren't reaching for tissues, they were reaching for the remote. It didn't feel like a breakdown, it felt like the start of a marketing campaign. And the timing, a little too on the nose. Just as Megyn's name was starting to fade from headlines, here comes an emotional podcast episode, complete with just enough vulnerability to grab attention. It didn't feel spontaneous, it felt strategic.
It's not my country, and it's stupid.
Do you care about the royal family?
Of course not. It's an anachronism, and it's. I said this to people who are royals to their face. I'm not going to call you Your Highness.
To be clear, no one's saying real emotion shouldn't be shared, but there's a difference between being an open and packaging emotion like content. That's what so many people are reacting to. Not the sadness itself, but how neatly it's wrapped in a bow, edited, filtered, and ready for public consumption. It's not just that Megyn blurred the line between being real and performing, it's that she seemed to embrace both at once, as if the tears were just another part of the production. Joe has a way of calling out anything that smells fake, and Megyn isn't shy about pointing out when something feels emotionally manipulative. And this? It didn't pass the sniff test for either of them, or for a lot of the public, really. If this was meant to be Megyn's most vulnerable moment yet, it may have missed the mark. Instead of empathy, it sparked analysis, commentary, and yes, plenty of memes. Somewhere out there, maybe even an acting coach felt a twinge of sadness, not for Megyn's story, but for the performance that almost worked. So was Megyn's on-air crying a genuine moment or just a PR move? We can't say for sure, but let's be honest, her public image lately makes it seem like she'll do anything for attention and clicks. Especially in the eyes of people like Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, who aren't exactly known for letting things slide. What do you guys think? Was it real emotion or just another performance?